And now I would like to invite someone to the podium who is versatile. You see him in a lot of roles related to young adult ministry or to communications. Today, though, he is representing our young adult ministry area, Mr. Ben Smith, who is the chair of Young Adult Ministries. Will you please come?
Thank you all. Good morning. I am Ben Smith. I'm a straight, white layperson from the Tennessee Valley District, and I am a young person. I come to you today as a member of the Young Adult Ministry area, and you can read our report in the Book of Reports, but I want to speak a little beyond that. Thank you, Bishop Wallace-Padgett and the body for allowing us to have some time here for a young adult address. I hope that this might continue so that we might continue to hold space for the young people in our conference so that you could hear from others who have a dream and a vision for what our conference is and what it can be. Before I go any farther, I want to say a few words of thanks. See, Holston has shaped me in too many ways to count. I was baptized as an infant at Fountain City. I was confirmed under the mentorship of the Reverend Dan Kelly, and raised by pastors like Jim Wedby, Don Hanju, Randy Fry, and Melissa Smith. My spiritual life has been stretched by friends and now colleagues like Reverend Dr. Susan Arnold, Leah Burns, and Tim Jones. Holston gave me my first job in ministry as a youth intern and then welcomed me into full-time youth ministry before supporting me in discovering a passion for storytelling and communications. I've gotten to serve churches across our region representing Holston at jurisdictional conference, at our general conference, and have had the honor of sharing the stories of faith leaders in Uganda, in Dubai, in the Baltics, in Guatemala, and across our country. I've taught and learned alongside other communicators and professionals in Holston across our jurisdiction and throughout our global connection. And I've had the chance to sit at the feet of bishops, missionaries, denominational leaders, and heroes of our faith, people whose wisdom has shaped this denomination and whose voices have grounded my own. Family, this conference has invested in me, in my faith and my leadership. You have taught me spiritual disciplines and given me confidence in my calling as a layperson. You've entrusted me with responsibility, not because I have proven myself, but because individual leaders in our body have built authentic relationship with me and created space for me to grow. I am an example of this body investing in young people, so thank you. But I think my story is an exception. When I look around this room, I do not see many young people who share my story. One of the joys of my job is interviewing all kinds of people. This year's retiree video, I got to be a part of producing that. That's one of my favorite projects of the year because I get to hear the history. I get to hear all of the wisdom that comes from the clergy who have built this conference. But I get to interview all kinds of people, from bishops to conference staff to lay people to clergy across our conference. And in the last couple years, I have finished all of my interviews asking the same question: what gives you hope for the future of the church? And do you know what I hear more than anything? I think you could guess. The next generation, the young people, right? The ones coming up in seminary, the ones in youth groups, campus ministries, local congregations, the ones offering fresh perspective, creativity, and courage. I say the ones daring to ask how we might be able to do this differently. Last year at annual conference, from our sermons to our guest speakers, so much of our focus was investing on young people in new voices. But I think we're stuck putting those intentions into actions, into structural change. This is not a speech full of instructions on how to get more young people into your church. If that's what you're expecting, I hate that I will be disappointing you. You can read our written report in the Book of Reports for a little a word on that. No, but what I hope you'll hear me, I hope you will hear me as a sibling, as a co-laborer in the gospel. What I want to speak to, what I long for, what I believe that you long for is revival. Not revival in the old tent meeting sense, but revival as resurrection, revival as remembering. But to get there, we have to start with what I think many of us feel, but rarely share out loud. Family, I am tired. It's more than just too many meetings or too few volunteers. See, I mean the deep fatigue that comes from holding up systems that feel too heavy to carry, but too sacred to let down. I'm tired of guarding traditions we love, but which no longer serve the people around us. Tired of holding up a church that often feels more like an institution to preserve than a movement to join. I spent the last few years on our conference staff. I've tried to give my best effort, alongside many others, to help Holston step into a more honest, more courageous version of itself. And yet over and over, I have found myself pushing up against the same walls. Traditions that exclude people we claim to welcome, systems we know aren't working but are too afraid to change, and a culture that confuses longevity with faithfulness and preservation with mission. This kind of tiredness, this burnout, is not just administrative, it is spiritual. Because what sits underneath our burnout, this culture of maintenance, our hesitancy to risk, our longing for what was, is something deeper. A fear that our best days are behind us. That maybe decline is irreversible. That if we let go of what we've built, we will have nothing left. And the more I talk to other lay people and clergy across Holston, certainly the more I talk to young people across Holston, I realize I am not alone. We are tired. We are tired of doing more with less, tired of watching budgets shrink and responsibilities grow, tired of figuring out how to keep the lights on and the HVAC running. We grip so tightly to what's familiar, not because we think it's working, but because we don't know what else to do. Family, younger adults entering their ministry as clergy or as lay people today are stepping into this exhaustion from day one. If we do not address the structures fueling that fatigue, we are setting them up to burn out before they even find their voice. Friends, I hope you will hear this. We are not called to save the church. We are called to listen, to discern where the Spirit is already stirring in our communities, and to go there, open-handed, open-hearted, ready to build relationship with God and with each other. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to travel to England with a group of Holston clergy and lay, visiting the roots of our Methodist tradition. We stood in churches and cathedrals. We walked Wesley's steps through London and Oxford and Epworth. But for me, it was our visit to the New Room in Bristol that stayed with me. The New Room is small, humble, nothing like a cathedral. But it was there that a movement began, a place where people gathered to grow in faith and community in the context of their everyday lives. While I was standing in that room learning about the thousands of hymns Charles Wesley wrote, I was reminded of these words. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save and fit it for the sky. To serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my master's will. That line, to serve the present age, has been stirring in my mind. I believe that's what we are called to do. That's the whole thing. Our calling is not to preserve what was, it is to serve the present age. To glorify God by showing up, not for the church as an institution, but for our neighbors, for our communities, and the people whom God is already calling back into deeper relationship. The good news is we are already seeing this happen across Holston. Not in big programs or conference initiatives, but in quiet acts of hospitality. In unexpected friendships formed outside the walls of our church, in brave conversations where wounds are named and healing begins. In churches that dared to let go of outdated models and tried something new, not because it was guaranteed to succeed, but because it was incarnational. These are small signs of resurrection. And these are the kind of spaces where young adults are actually finding footing in the church. Places where they've been allowed to help shape ministry, not just to be the target of ministry. But resurrection is never clean. As Dr. Roberto Che Espinoza writes, resurrection retains its wounds. Jesus rose with scars. And it was in the wounds that his friends recognized him. That pain was not erased, it was held because it was part of his witness. Friends, we are a wounded church. We have wounds of exclusion, of silence, of pride, of fear. And if we are going to be a resurrection people, we have to stop pretending that we are not still bleeding. We have to tell the truth. We have to confess where we have harmed people, where we continue to harm people. We have to name the parts of the body we have cast aside, and we have to begin again the work of remembering. Espinoza writes that the body of Christ has been dismembered, torn apart by fear, empire, white supremacy, and self-preservation. Our call is to remember, to bring back into connection all the people and pieces we have cast aside. Black and brown people, queer folk, prophetic voices, wounded leaders, and forgotten neighbors. Young adults belong on this list too, especially those we've told they are too loud, too political, too idealistic. Remembering the body means honoring their perspective as gift, not as liability. The Catholic Church has a word for this posture. They have a word, synodality. It really just means to journey together. In his first address as the head of the Catholic Church, Pope Leo said he would continue in Pope Francis's focus on synodality by calling the church to walk together, to be a people who listen, who believe that the Spirit speaks not just from the pulpit, but through everyone. That's the kind of church I believe in. A church that walks with, that listens deeply, that adapts because it trusts the Spirit more than it trusts its own abilities and traditions. Synodality is the church leaning in to say we don't have all the answers, but we are here, we are listening, we are moving forward together. I believe Holston is being invited to be that kind of church. Not a church where we know all the answers, but a church that is willing to be led by the Spirit, by the margins, and by each other. And if we want to grow younger, we cannot journey together while keeping the next generation at arm's length. Synodality means welcoming young adults to walk beside us, helping shape where we go. But while we hesitate, while we downsize and spend time getting our own house in order, the world keeps bleeding. While we argue over budgets and buildings, bombs are falling on children in Gaza supported by our own government. Our own neighbors are hunted and terrorized for the language they speak and the color of their skin. Queer kids in our community are told they are lesser than and endangered to their peers. People are lonely, angry, disillusioned, and too often the church is silent, caught up in our own survival. But the gospel is not about survival. It's about surrender. It's about love so bold that it crosses lines, so present that it bears its wounds, so free that it cannot be contained. Here is what I know. There is still time. The Spirit is still moving, and there is still hope, not in what we can preserve, but in what we might finally be willing to release. And if we are bold enough to let go of fear, of control, of safety, then we might make room for the revival of God to do something new. We were never meant to hold the church together by force. So let's move past mourning what we have lost and start practicing resurrection, remembering the body into something new. If you lead a church, ask who's missing from the room and what might we need to release to make space. If you sit on a conference committee, ask, are we protecting what was or building what could be? A friend and mentor of mine told me, to really change culture around inclusion of new people, you have to center them for a season. Prioritize them. Don't just welcome them into your space, but seek to change the environment so they don't have to be the odd person out. To those with the authority to shape our systems, what will it take for our conference's default setting to be yes to new voices, to new ways of being the church? Will you commit to evaluating every table you sit at by who's missing? Will you commission our boards, agencies, and staff to center the voices that we have left behind? If your vision is inclusive, but our communities aren't, if your sermons are bold, but your decision-making cautious, we are preaching one gospel and living another. Lead us by showing what it looks like to release control, to make room, and to trust new voices, to trust young voices, to trust lay voices. You have the power to model what holy risk can look like. Use it. Family, I hope I'm not bringing doom and gloom into this body today. We have heard stories, so many stories, examples of new life breaking through our church. Many of you are already remembering the body and reimagining the church. My prayer is that our conference, our structures, our budgets, and our personnel will catch up with these trailblazers so that we can return to the charge that we have been given, to serve the present age, to glorify our God. May all our powers be engaged to do our Master's will, not in defense of what has been, but in joyful pursuit of what is becoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. We appreciate you and your ministry among us, and thank you for that challenging word. Okay, I'm going to now